And we are live. Welcome to F is for Fanatic. I am Cody. I got Holly on. How you doing today, Holly?
How how are you, my man? Thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited to be on here with you. It's an honor and a privilege. And of course, congratulations on F is for Fanatics and nothing but a big future ahead for the channel. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to get this thing going. It's building out. We're gonna put all the concrete and the foundation and everything, but we're gonna get rocking and rolling for sure. So today we're talking about FSU program, a blood program for sure. This program's won 3 national titles, 18 conference titles. It's had 3 Heisman winners, 46 first-round picks, and it has had just came off of a pretty good season under Mike Norvell, aka the Portal King, 10-3. How you feel about that, Holly?
Oh, look, it's exciting. I think, it's been a long time since FSU had a football season to be proud of. And certainly, 10 wins under our belt. It's a decade or more. So, look, it's very exciting. FSU looks strong this year. It looks like it's going to be strong again. And look, we talk about 10 wins. Had it not been for a complete meltdown in the last couple of plays of that NC State game, could have very well have been 11 wins if we set ourselves up for a field goal. So FSU appears to be stronger next year. But this year, I think for most recent FSU teams that we've seen, this year is the most critical to the program. Another 10 or 11 win season, and you start to feel that winning isn't just a one-year snafu, flash in the pan, something that just kind of happened randomly. You start to feel like winning is consistent. And FSU hasn't had that in a while, since Jimbo was around, that you actually saw growth within the program and development with the players. So what does that mean for 2023, the 2023 season? Great. It was a huge building block. But it's all for naught. A 10-win season is not going to mean anything to anybody in Tallahassee if we can't follow that up with another good season, 10 or 11 wins minimum in 2024. If we can't pull that off, then FSU just slides back into the mediocrity of college football. And it looks like it was just a one-off scenario where, the moon and the stars were aligned. It does look like, with the talent that we have coming back, that we should be able to at least duplicate our success this year. But again, it's critical that FSU is able to come out and carry that success over into the new season.
Yeah, you guys are bringing in some more talent through the portal. You get the big tight end Bell out of South Carolina, another stud. It's kind of reloading there. So, it's kind of feeling like, from the outside perspective, it's this is the year to try to get.
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute, Coach. Are you there?
Are you there?
Yeah. Your internet
Yeah.
just glitched out a little bit. Yeah, look, I mean, from a transfer standpoint, I don't think anybody, an FSU fan, could ask for anything better than what Norvell has done in the portal the last couple of years. I mean, he's had very few misses in some of the kids that he's brought in as transfers from other schools. But he's had a couple of major home runs with, Jermaine Johnson being the defensive end transfer from Georgia that ended up being a first-round draft pick for the New York Jets. But look, I mean, you can only live on transfers for so long, right? But yeah, to your point, I mean, look, this is the year that FSU's got to put it together. Jordan Travis is about to play his 6th year of football. We were able to keep Jared Verse on the field this year. Aside from Jamie Robinson, we did not lose anybody to real attrition. We had some transfers, like that. Everybody has that now, but we had people who had the ability to potentially go pro that opted to stay in. Johnny Wilson being another one. Just his size for the NFL would make him draftable. Jared Verse had a very, very productive year, opted to stay with Florida State. And then, of course, we've got, the running backs that had the ability to even, put their name in the hat to have an NFL evaluation done, and opted to stay with FSU. So, yeah, it's all kind of coming together for this year. But again, that's why this year is so absolutely critical, because if they can't get this team to perform to the standard that they set in 2022, 2023, then 2024 is a complete failure with the talent that they have there. But that being said, I mean, look, it's there for the taking. We'll see what happens with the talent, the production, and just being able to build off of 2 years of consistency. Again, critical for FSU.
Yeah, and I would say the ACC this year. Miami just a complete dumpster fire last year. Yeah, they bring in a big recruiting class this year, but young guys it is. But young guys, you can't tell me all those true freshmen are going to do, and who's going to play quarterback there?
Nobody.
Louisville, little something, but I don't see it. So who do you have? Wake Forest with that slow mash. That's a hard team that you guys always play. So ACC very winnable. You guys went out. I don't know what your non-conference games look like, but you could line up to sneak into the playoffs.
Sure. Look, I mean, we start the season again with LSU. We're doing 2 neutral site games. Obviously, last year we went out to Louisiana in the Superdome and pulled that game off. This year, we start the season again with LSU. This time, however, they come to Orlando. I'm not sure what the stadium's called anymore. Camping World is what it used to be. It was the Cheez-It Bowl to me. And then we've got North Alabama and Southern Miss. And then, of course, we have Florida. So, again, like last year, 2 home teams, or 2 SEC teams as our out of conference. And then again, look, they've released the schedule. It somewhat favored FSU. It somewhat hurt FSU a little bit, mostly because we have 3 back-to-back home games right in the thick of the season, which it doesn't break that up very well. You'd like to see those kind of spread out throughout the season from start to finish. But we do have to play Pitt at Pitt. And we were able to get that game early in November, which is a huge win. If anybody's ever been to Pittsburgh in November, the later it gets in the latter part of the year, it can get ugly up there. Like, the weather is not fun to play in. It can get down to the 20s. So that the weather could be a factor there. But we were able to get Boston College. We have to go to Boston early in the year in September. So we'll be able to kind of avoid one weather scenario, but at the same time, one could be a little bit adverse for us. The other thing that I thought the ACC did very well this year, which they had a complete debacle last year in their scheduling for the conference as a whole, was they were able to get FSU and Clemson on the field early into the season. We play Clemson at Clemson on the 23rd of September. So within the first 4 games of our season, that'll be our 5th game that we were able to get on the field. Last year, the ACC completely shot itself in the foot with like 4 or 5 of their best marquee matchups all being played in the month of October. And they also paired them up in tandem with each other to where we were competing against one another. I'm not sure if anybody would be surprised by the fact that the ACC can't really find, their elbow from their ass. But this time around, it actually looks like the schedule's lined up very well. We do have the Wake Forest slow mesh, but they don't have Sam Hartman anymore. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing now that he's moved on to Notre Dame. I'm not really sure what that roster looks like. Sam Hartman had that offense running like a machine. However, so any chance we can have to have him not lining up against us is a win for us. And then again, we play Miami. They have to come to Doak, but we get them in November. It's fine with me. I don't care when we play Miami. Miami's own worst enemy for the most part. And then, of course, the cap of the season back on a Saturday. No Friday game this year for Florida and Florida State, but we do have to play it out in Gainesville. So we'll see how the two teams line up, how they match up. Look, if Florida's having a good year, you can expect that'll be a prime time marquee matchup that we can all expect to be under the lights on a Saturday night, Thanksgiving weekend.
Are you there?
Yep, I lost you there for a second, my man.
Okay. Sorry. Technical difficulty, guys. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, the Florida State matchup, minus the Dalvin Cook years that really have scarred me forever. Yeah, it's always a good game. You know, Florida State probably had the two best games last year, with the LSU game at the very beginning of the season. That was a highlight game. That was a thriller, and then the Florida State game at the end of the year, that was another thriller. After that, I just want to kind of ask you what, when you were a kid, why
FSU? Is that the question? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
All right, so we're moving on to why did you fall in love with FSU?
Well, I think the way that a lot of folks end up being a fan of their chosen team is that they grew up with it, right? Their parents were a fan, and then they just kind of carried on with that. And when I grew up, my father was a huge FSU fan. He watched every game, and of course, that kind of led me to watch it. Now, the other thing that was odd about the Florida State Seminoles back then is that they weren't a very big team. They weren't a marquee team. They were still a younger team. They hadn't won a national championship yet. We're talking the late 80s when Deion Sanders was out there. But being in Jacksonville, where I grew up and where I am now, the Gators got all the publicity. That's all you really heard about. So to hear about Florida State, this little team out, in the Panhandle, to get any kind of notoriety, and then of course my father being a huge fan of them, it kind of intrigued me. Like with Florida getting all the attention, especially the Florida Georgia game, but why that team? So I started to kind of follow them more than any other team. And then as I kind of started to grow up in my arc of interest in football, it kind of coincided with FSU's surgence from the 90s, where they won, they were in the top 5, I want to say 12 consecutive years. They won a couple of national championships, Heisman's, right? But if you've ever seen like Doak Campbell Stadium, in the early 90s, it was awful. It looked brutal. So I don't know, maybe there's a part of me that felt like I somewhat grew up with FSU. Like FSU got bigger and more wise and became the powerhouse that they were as I was growing up and becoming more mature. And it felt like we kind of did that together. Which when Florida State won the national championship for the first time in 1993, it felt like that was like the arc, right? That was the part where it all came together. And then of course in Peter Warwick and Chris Winkie, when they beat Virginia Tech, how I was 22 years old, I guess at that point, 21. So look, that was like I'm mature now. I'm growing up. The team's growing up. We're winning national championships. We're winning Heisman's. It all came together so well that it's just become kind of a passion for me. It's just been part of me as I've grown to watch Florida State, that they've been a part of my arc of football along with me.
Gotcha. So what's the The game that hurts the most.
Oh, oh, Cody, right in the heart. You're gonna make me pour my heart out for this one, huh? It's gonna be a close one, but I would have to say the national championship loss, not to Florida, but because that was a close second, but to Oklahoma. And the reason why is because, look, the national championship loss to Florida were two great teams, and it was a rematch of Danny Warfel and you guys playing us in Tallahassee. But the Oklahoma loss, FSU that year was steamrolling teams. I mean, Chris Winkie had won the Heisman. We had Marvin Minnis, who was considered for the Biletnikoff. We had it was just a very, very solid all-around team. And of course, it was a Mickey Andrews defense, which just, sometimes felt like a brick wall that you couldn't get around. But that was also the year that Mark Richt accepted the job to Georgia. He was our offensive coordinator at the time. And you could tell the level of preparedness that our offense had going into that Oklahoma game. Chris Winkie won the Heisman. There's a ton of press that goes along with that. There's a ton of interviews that go along with that that could distract you from your normal pregame, standards that you go through for film study and things like that. And then Mark Richt did not have a game plan equipped to win a national championship. And with all the big wins and the heavy-handed, run up the score type of scenarios that we had, 13-2, we did not score a single touchdown, and the only reason that we scored was a punt that they went over their head when they were trying to kick the ball. So that one hurt the most because you just didn't expect it. Like, I could take the loss to Florida because I knew we were playing a good team. Like Oklahoma, 13-2, Josh Heupel at quarterback, Bob Stoops at head coach, and Bob Stoops was just becoming a head coach back then. He was the defensive coordinator, as everybody here knows, for Florida, for Spurrier for many years. So he was still cutting his teeth as a head coach. Oh. So we lost to this guy that nobody had ever heard of at quarterback, and we were just this powerhouse team, and it was just a complete and total devastating loss, at least for me, for that program in that year. But thank you for bringing back such amazing memories for me, Cody. I'll just cry myself to sleep tonight. I appreciate that. But look, with what's bad comes good, right? So if I'm gonna sit here and bring back the salty tears of unfathomable sadness in the loss to Oklahoma, I will dang for sure go back to winning the national championship with Jameis and Jimbo. So I've always got that to lull me to sleep.
All right, we are back. I am so sorry about that, guys. This is, like I said, the first trial run. Things happen.
We're making the best of it, my man. We're making the best of it.
Hey,
All
we're
right,
just
so
going to keep pushing through. Oh, well. So,
there
all
it
right.
is.
So,
I see you,
let's talk
Poopy. It is
about
my fault. It's FSU mojo. Bad FSU mojo.
Hey, the show must go on. So let's talk a little bit about recruiting and transfer portal. You know, you do have the transfer king himself. Notable transfers that you guys have had. Obviously, Levis, Bell, the tight end, and then Pittman, another wide receiver, and then you said the D end out of Miami. The
Yeah.
guy I just find talent. Settle the program. You have to get guys out of high school. Nobody can win a national title without getting a top 2 or 3 class. But if he wins a national title, ranked 16 right now with his recruiting class in high school and number 2 in the transfer portal, maybe there's a different way to skin the cat.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think at this point, you've got to look at college recruiting in kind of a 3-phase process now, right? It's not just the old school manner of going out and finding these high school prospects and developing relationships with them for the time that they're in 7th grade. Sure, that's still a component of it. But a big part of what I think a lot of teams are going to start doing is understanding that being in a college program, in a nutrition program, in a weight program, and having college experience, college game experience translates very well, provided that player can adjust to the culture and adjust to what you want to do with them in regard to their talent and their skill set. And I think that's exactly what Mike Norvell's done. He's got kids to come in and they buy into the culture. And I know that's just this cliche thing that we say all the time is about buying into culture, but it does matter. And the difference between seeing that and when it happens and when it doesn't is about as apparent as possible. Now, can you always point the finger as to how it happened? No, but can you see when it does and when it doesn't? Absolutely. And yeah, just to name a couple guys, I mean, we've got Johnny Wilson was a transfer from Arizona State. We got him the same year that Florida got Pearsall. Obviously Jared Verse transferred. He was from a smaller school. I think he came from Buffalo or Albany, one of those two. Jermaine Johnson, who we mentioned, was a transfer from Georgia. We picked up the kid from Miami. And then just this year, obviously Jaheim Bell was big. We restocked our offensive line with some big guys with a lot of college experience. But again, just going back to the ability that even with the transfer class this big, Norvell's track record feels like even if we miss on a couple, that a couple are going to be home runs. But look, it's a 2-part process. From a recruiting standpoint, there's still work to be done. I'm not in love with our high school prospect recruiting and the way that's developed under Norvell. Now, is he maybe putting a little bit more emphasis on the portal because of the success that he's had? Sure. But to try to continue to constantly have turnover in your roster because you're only getting these guys for a couple of years does make it tough. You've got to have that foundation and support system from the college, or from the high school to college ranks, to give yourself the ability to use the transfer portal as the pieces to kind of fill in the gaps that you don't have. A top 20 recruiting class is great. A top wide receiver in Hakeem Williams, fantastic. I don't think Florida State's had a wide receiver ranked that highly in some years, quite some time. As a matter of fact, I can't think of one now that I'm putting my mind to it. So Hakeem Williams is a big get for FSU, and it's going to be a situation where we got to continue to use the success that we've had recently, make perpetual motion out of that and turn that into some momentum in the high school ranks. Another year or two of a solid product on the field, and I think that kind of picks itself up where it goes. But if you look at what Florida's done in the high school ranks versus what Florida State's done, there's it seems to be that there's a contrast there, and I think Florida's doing a better job right now than what Florida State's doing in the high school ranks. Florida State's doing better right now than what Florida's doing in the portal.
Yeah, I think there are certain positions though that transfers are more impactful. I like a transfer offensive and defense. Like if you give me a guy that has playing time with 3 years left and he's a transfer and he has significant playing time, he's got 2 years left of eligibility, and he's been in the weight program of a college as opposed to a 5-star kid out of high school, offensive or defensive lineman. I like the trend. Wide position, quarter. I lean towards the high school kid, but I think that I like a transfer.
Yeah, especially on the lines. The lines, I
So
agree, are the most important.
Definitely. Even if you're getting a guy highly touted, he's still getting that weight program.
Yep.
And he's practice against good guys every day. As opposed to having to put the weight on that a high school guy has to do. Let's lean into the greatest moment of a FSU fan for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that after the salty tears of unfathomable sadness that I had to share with everybody regarding the Oklahoma loss in the national championship and the utter egg that we laid from an offensive standpoint. I get to go back and find the pillow, the bosom that I get to rest my head on at night. That makes me believe that FSU can be great.
It's not all doom and gloom here.
No. I appreciate that, Cody. I appreciate that, man. Look, there's a couple. I mean, I could certainly point to any of the national championships. Those would be great. But the 2013 Natty with Jameis Winston and Jimbo, that one just felt different than some of the others because we weren't that good. We didn't think we were going to be that good. We had a freshman quarterback that nobody had really ever heard of. He'd never thrown a ball in college. EJ Manuel was our quarterback prior to Jameis coming in, and he had his hot and cold moments. He wasn't really consistent. A great kid, loved him as a player for us from his character, but he just had hot and cold moments. So then you got Jimbo, you got Jameis. The game itself, that national championship game, has got to be one of the top 10 best games national championship wise that has ever been played, especially with just the swings of the score being FSU being down to Auburn, having to come back. There's a fake punt. There's just about a kick return that goes back for FSU that we take back to the house. But it was just everything. Our defense, my gosh, our defense. Every starting 11 on the defensive side of the ball got drafted at one point in time or another. So it felt like one with the talent at quarterback, who we at the time we believed was the future of the program because he was a freshman. The ability to pull out such a close, high-profile game, and then just the talent that we saw on the field itself, it gave FSU fans all the optimism in the world to think that this was going to be the start of the dynasty again. So the game itself was huge. Loved the national championship. The game was amazing. It was a nail biter. It came down to the last 13 seconds on the clock. But it was everything else around FSU at the time. Jimbo Fisher was a younger coach. We had a freshman. We had a talent base. We had good coaching. There was just a buzz around it. Now, obviously, that buzz ended very quickly. Shortly thereafter, a couple of years later, we weren't very good. But that night just felt different than some of the other national championships that I remember. Maybe it's because I was older. I'm not sure. But that one felt different because it felt like we were back and we were going to stay back. Clearly wrong, but that's how it felt.
Was Dalvin Cook on that team?
No, he was a freshman the year that we went. That was the first year of the playoffs when we went up against Oregon. Dalvin Cook was a freshman that year. He actually fumbled the ball twice in that game. But that was his freshman year with Jameis. We had Devontae Freeman prior to Dalvin.
That's what I thought.
Who Freeman in his own right was just a bowling ball. I mean, Dalvin could put his foot in the ground, make one cut, and be back at 90 miles an hour, sprinting like a deer down the sidelines. Devontae was a little bit of a different slasher style runner between the tackles, but he had a low pad level, and he would hit hard and he would hit consistently. And he could also beat you with a little bit of speed. He wasn't Dalvin speed. He wasn't Dalvin cutting ability. But if you got in between the tackles and there was a gap, if you're a linebacker, you better understand that he's not gonna let up and he's not gonna go around you.
Yeah, as a Florida fan, I was glad to see Dalvin go because I mean he tormented us for years. I don't think we ever beat a Dalvin team.
I
think
so,
we went
no.
0-4. So, so you're saying that national championship game was better than the last one we just got to watch?
I would say it was a little bit more captivating in the essence of what a football game should be. Yes, yeah. I would agree with that statement.
Gotcha. All right, Hawley. I got 2 more questions for you.
Let's fire them away.
I got one. So the show F is for Fanatic. You know, Fanatic. What's the craziest thing you've done being a fan? Thrown a tablet, screamed at the TV, yelled at the kids. Shut yourself in a room for a long weekend. What is it?
I mean, look,
I'm not gonna lie. Cried.
Yeah. Well, I mean, after the Clemson loss this year, I want to say all of those in the same night would be qualified. There is a remote that is no longer capable of remoting. I had to download a virtual remote on this because it doesn't exist any longer. Let's see. I've cursed out relatives. No, I've never taken it out on the kid. At least not that I can remember. I was probably pretty drunk if that was the case. I've taken it out on Shelton before. Yeah, see, Shelton, I think he even said, yeah, all of those things. Yeah, that's 100% accurate. It's all of those things encapsulated into one. Okay. And I don't like to just pick one or the other. I just like to combine them all into one little ball of fury and sadness.
All of them.
And just sulk.
Okay. So
great question.
So we're getting something. We're going to get the Fanatic stamp of approval. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but you are getting one coming. Okay.
Oh boy.
You are definitely a fanatic. All right. And then the last thing.
Shelby, he yells at me all the
time. You're standing there in Publix. Okay.
Okay.
In the chip aisle. And a young 5-star quarterback bumps into you and you're in your FSU gear. And he says, you have 30 seconds to convince me to go to FSU. Go.
Well, look, it's Bobby Bowden University. Find me a more classy, better coach. Also, I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they're called the Tallahassee Lassies. My goodness, the women in Florida State. It's the city of Seven Hills. It's the Marching Chiefs in Doak Campbell Stadium. It's 80,000 people doing the war chant. There's Deion Sanders, Charlie Ward, Jameis Winston, Peter Warwick. I'll hand you a chisel and you can etch your name into the side of a monument with all of the greats of FSU. There's no reason why we shouldn't accept you here. Come on down, son.
All right, Hawley, thank you for coming on to FSU Fanatics.
Absolutely,
This is
my man.
you're welcome anytime you
Great show, and
want to
thank you
come
very
on.
much for having me.
Sorry, guys, for the technical difficulties. We will get it ironed out, and we will see you next week for Gator Week.
Have a great night, guys.
See ya.